Hello and welcome. Big news this morning. The Woj bomb has dropped. The Hawks are officially under new ownership. A syndicate led by two-time NBA Executive of the Year, Bryan Colangelo, a group that involves two American partners and one Australian, have been awarded the license for the Foundation Club. Bryan, hello, welcome, congratulations.
Well, thank you very much, Liam. I appreciate it. We're excited. This is big news for us and hopefully big news for Hawks basketball fans. We think that joining, the league at the current time with this particular team and the runway that we have in front of us, a blank slate and an opportunity to really make an impact is just an exciting time. And what's happened with the league, the growth, the progress that's been made, Larry Kesselman's done a great job of leading the troops and his team, Jeremy and others, to really bring respectability to the Australian basketball component here. The league itself, with the Next Stars program and others, that initiative has really given some credibility. Obviously, LaMelo Ball with this team last year brought a lot of fanfare and eyeballs to Australian basketball that otherwise, weren't there before. But the game itself is in great shape. Outside of COVID, the game of basketball is thriving, and it's poised, for many, many years ahead to continue growing, and it's even proliferating in other ways now with gaming and the esports opportunities that are existing. People love basketball. The sport is something that is in their hearts and minds. And, we're hoping that, we can build on what's been established, for many, many years now with a great tradition of Australian basketball.
Tell me about your partners, the group you've put together.
The group is essentially, as you said, it consists of some Americans and Dory, who is from Australia and has a great background in business, entrepreneurship, basketball. He's played the sport. He's been an owner. Dory is effectively going to be running the operation, being his feet on the ground there, and being the guy that knows the league probably better than any of us. As an equity partner, I plan to be an advisor and try to help things along the way. We're looking to, decide, quickly what's going to happen with the basketball operation. But whoever we ultimately put in that position as head coach, that role is really going to be coach and management of the basketball team itself. And we're going to be looking for whoever that person is to have a lot of input and say as to how the roster is constructed, the style of play, where we want to take things with the organization. And, it's important that as a, person in that decision-making role is making those decisions, that the coach is on board. I've always operated that way. Generally, and I would say the model hasn't worked great in the NBA, or in certain leagues where the coach and the management are one position. But I think in this league, with just, 9 teams, a 10th coming on the horizon, but a smaller pool of what I'll call domestic players, the Australian players, it's really important, especially as a foreigner, to understand where my strengths are. My strengths are not fully understanding the landscape of the Australian basketball market. It's more so how I can help bring the import players in, and maybe even help the league with the possible Next Stars program. So I want to make sure that whoever we put in that main position of basketball, he'll be supported by me as an advisor, by Dory as president of the organization, and Michael Proctor, who's one of our partners, as again another basketball advisor. But we're going to do what's right and necessary, provide the resources, provide the leeway, but make the right decision on terms of who that person is going to be to lead the charge basketball-wise.
What's your overall vision for the club? I'm sure you guys as a team have had some conversations about that, short term, long term. What do you want this club to be under your ownership?
Well, short term, we're obviously looking to turn the page in terms of winning. The team struggled last year, despite the fact that there was some media hype following, the team, and LaMelo was putting on a show uh, in a big way, night in and night out, and performed at a pretty high level when he was healthy enough to play. We want to put a group together that is going to be a basketball team that gives us a sustainable winning base. It's going to be a year after year thing. And whatever we do with respect to supplementing that with import players or next star performers, it's certainly going to be something that we look to enhance what we've already got in place. As far as style of play, I like to play fast. I like my teams to run, score a lot of points, and be entertaining. But I've got to find a balance there with what ultimately, the head coach and management want to do. And so what I would tell you is we're going to be a smart team. We're going to be prepared. The program is going to be prepared and understand analytics. We're going to be innovative from a basketball standpoint and how we, prepare for opponents and how we play the game. The style of play should be dictated by, sensibility and education and science. And that's really where analytics has played such an important role in basketball right now. So, we're looking to bring something that's going to be entirely new. That's first and foremost. Longer term, obviously, sustainable winning and championships. We want to hang several banners up in the rafters. We want to win championships. But you got to start somewhere. You got to take that next step. And again, we're excited about what's ahead of us. But there's a lot of information to sort through right now. In the process of preparing for this transaction, we did some due diligence, but there's only so much information that you're made available to. But at the end of the day, there's a lot to pour through. We're going through that now. We're preparing to potentially, make some important and vital basketball decisions on the near-term horizon. But we want to get ready for free agency. It's right around the corner. That's something that's, again, a near-term issue. Longer term, though, again, I want to really say to the people in Wollongong and the people that have been following this team for so long, we intend to play in the building that we're in. Hopefully it's an improved building. We're working on some of those improvements now. We're working on some of the things that can enhance the fan experience and the experience for people to come to the games. We want our players to be in first class, professional standards of locker room and playing surface and other things. So, we're going to be looking at what that means in terms of improvements to the facility. But Wollongong is our home base, and we intend to continue to stay here. We're going to branch out in other ways. We're really looking to, spread the base, if you will. We'd like to explore playing in Canberra and other places because, it is a small market, and we'd like to expand again the number of people that follow us and follow us with enthusiasm and passion. But there's no question. For now, we're here in Wollongong, and we're very pleased to be here. And I'm excited about meeting the fans and being able to interact with some of the people that are so important to the success of the organization.
You spoke to it a little bit there, but part of the announcement this morning was it revealed that, I quote, that the team would go by the name of the Hawks as they look to expand their footprint across New South Wales and beyond. As you could imagine, as I said before, it's a foundation club, a long history, some very passionate supporters. And this is probably an element that they have latched onto this morning and has caught their attention. What more can you tell us about that process? I mean, was that a difficult decision for you guys to make?
Well, honestly, this was something that was driven perhaps more by the league. We've talked about what our desires would be to increase the fan base and increase the ability for people to jump on board, if you will, with being a Hawks fan. But with respect to Wollongong, there's no question. Our lead intention and primary intention is to stay here, to embrace them as our home community. And again, this is just about expanding the base of people that have a chance to follow us, and we're going to do our best to, create new fans. We want to make this a profitable venture, but something, again, that's sustainable in a way that we can put a winning product on the floor year in and year out. That's going to be the first and foremost, concern for us. So at the end of the day, Wollongong is home, and we look forward to, remaining here, staying, with all those relationships and connections, and no one should be fretting that we're on the way out of town.
You mentioned the Next Stars program before.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, LaMelo's involvement last year helped put this organization on the map globally in terms of basketball. What level of interest do you have in the Next Stars program? Is this something you are looking to get your hands on?
Yeah, listen, it brings obviously excitement and interest in the league. And I'm not just talking about local domestic interest, I'm talking about international interest. When you've got a potential NBA star coming into your league and playing and bringing eyeballs, in the form of ESPN and other places, people staying up in the middle of the night to watch LaMelo play last year, it's incredible. But it speaks to how successful that program can be. It was really visionary on the part of Larry Kesselman to put this in place, so much so that now the G League and the NBA is following suit with similar ideas. They're paying players to play on a select team. They're going to barnstorm around, play some prep schools. I think they're still getting the details worked out. Obviously, COVID has set some of that back as well. And that's not to say, we're concerned about them falling. I think what it speaks to is a form of flattery that Larry had a great idea, and it really put the NBL on the map. And I think that, there's no reason not to follow suit. With respect to, that pool of players, has it shrunk somewhat because now the G League is in competition with bidding for these types of players that may make a choice, to perhaps play professional basketball rather than going to the NCAA and playing 1 year and be out a year later, the old one and done. They need to decide where they're going to perform, at a level where they can develop, in a system where they can develop. Player development is so key in terms of those first formidable years of a player coming to the NBA. And you really want to spend a lot of time with the player. We can do that at our league level, and our coaching staff will be committed to player development. And we can offer a very competitive schedule against grown men playing professional basketball. And that's just something that I don't think right now other leagues can do. Mm-hmm. Certainly, the NCAA is great competition, but it's not professional basketball, and it's not playing against the tough Australian players that have become known to be, around the world. Australian players generally bring an edge, to the game, and skill-wise, they've really come a long ways in terms of, where they've developed. Coaching, has come a long way. So the country has nurtured the game of basketball, and I have a lot of respect for that, because they've taken a game, something that was created elsewhere, and made it special, made it something that's of national interest. And it's exciting to see, a country develop that kind of talent and have the impact on a global scale that it's having. We intend to continue to do that, with our program. Hopefully we can bring in some great import players that raise the level of talent, but also, help the Australians develop. If we can start, with the youth and work with the camps and make sure that we're doing our part on a grassroots level, that's certainly something that we have an intention to do. But the Next Stars program, and this notion that you can bring someone who's a budding star or a potential star and have an impact on our league and our fan base and the international community, is really kind of exciting. And we'd like to be part of that. We're going to encourage the league to pursue certain players. We've got a beat on, who those players might be. Have a lot of relationships with agents that are advising, would-be college players. College is not necessarily right now on great footing. There's a lot of issues affecting the NCAA and college basketball programs. So I think we're a viable alternative. to find a place where you can develop your game, grow socially and otherwise, and get paid a little bit of money in the process, and be prepared to take that next step at the level that you want to achieve, which is the NBA.
I presume also you'll be looking at the possibility of a draft and stash players in that regard.
Well, listen, that really entails, teams in the States wanting to participate in something like that. There's a lot of situations where some of that has to be agreed to kind of outside the margins, if you will. Once you draft a player, you retain rights. You can help negotiate timelines and discuss timelines, but the buyout clauses that are part of these player contracts, very tricky. FIBA clearances with respect to once a player's under contract with a foreign club. I've been involved with the game for a long time, and sometimes you draft a player and you have too many bodies on your roster, and it's just not the right time for them to come over. But once you draft a player, if that player says, "I'm coming," you literally have to offer him an NBA contract, and he either makes the team or he doesn't. So there needs to be a little bit of hand-holding and some conversations that take place prior to drafting, or at the end of the day, upon draft. And some of those discussions are not the most comfortable from an NBA point of view, but generally an agent tries to figure out, okay, how can I best prepare my player to get that NBA contract when it's time? So if it means coming overseas, whether it's to Europe or to, going to the international market, Australia, China, somewhere like that, they want to get paid, they want to develop, and they want to, move forward, preparing themselves to ultimately get that NBA deal signed. But, it takes a lot of stick handling along the way, and you need to, work through some of those issues. But the draft and stash model is a good one. And it's worked out for a lot of players in a lot of situations over the course of many years in the NBA. And, we look forward to participating with that. Hopefully the relationships that I've worked so long on, in the course of my career in the NBA, and Mike Proctor, who knows a number of college coaches and agents and NBA personnel guys, we can find some of those opportunities and discuss those situations in advance of the draft, so maybe they have that in mind coming into the process. So it's an exciting element to our game that we're going to work on.
You spoke before about the large number of Aussies playing in the NBA. I'm interested in your relationship with Australian basketball. From drafting Ben Simmons and Jonah Bolden in Philly, working with Brett Brown and an honorary Aussie, Danny Mills in Philadelphia as well, Michelle Timms and Luke Longley in Phoenix. Trading for Nate Jawai and Dave Anderson during your time in Toronto. Like, what have been your impressions of Aussie basketball and Aussie players over the journey?
Well, it's quite a list that you just put together. And just for clarity, the trade for Nate, we actually drafted him. I think the premise is that a team drafts the player, but that was negotiated beforehand. So we made that selection for, I believe it was Indiana, if I'm not mistaken. And Dave Anderson came later, and we had him on a brief time there, but great guys, loved having him. We got Nate when he was young and raw, and I was amazed at the size but how big and strong he was, but how nimble he was on his feet. He was very quick, had a good feel for the game. Just, obviously had some health things that were holding him back at the time. But, I was excited.
He's a free agent right now. He's a free agent.
Okay. Well, I don't know all the rules yet, but I'm probably not able to talk about free agency. So you mentioned his name, not me.
I did.
With respect to, like Luke was great. He was coming off his best years in Chicago, and he was part of a build for us in Phoenix when we were bringing in. I think Luke came in with Tom Gugliotta and others at a time where we were really trying to take a turn for our team. It worked out for a couple of years, but we ended up moving him in another deal, in a subsequent deal. All the players that you mentioned, they've all been different types of players. Ben Simmons is just an unreal talent, and clearly his base was built here. His father instilled a lot of that Australian toughness and strength and other things too. Ben can pretty much do whatever he wants to do. He's that kind of an athlete, and just an impressive person, and really enjoyed getting to know him in the short time that we had together, and just an incredible basketball talent. But Jonah, was a guy that we had a lot of interest in. I actually didn't see him in Australia. I saw him play, or at UCLA. I really saw him play in Serbia, and knew his history with growing up there, and then ultimately going to UCLA. But another talent, and got to know Daniel Moldovan, his agent, and through also through the Ben relationship. Been in touch with a few of those Aussies. So my claim to fame, though, has got to be picking Timsy, the first ever player to don a Phoenix Mercury uniform. I was president of the organization at the time, and we had an allocation draft, and she was playing in Germany, if I'm not mistaken, at the time. And I always start with a point guard. That's the way you at least my philosophy's been. If you have a point guard, you got a leg up on everything. And
Amen.
That was the key point with regard to picking her, and just a great person, fun, leader. Did so much for the Mercury. She really was the original Phoenix Mercury player, and had a great run with her. We went to the finals in our second year. But I heard Timsy's coaching now, and I look forward to catching up with her at some point. And who knows? Maybe there's a spot on our coaching staff one day. There's always this blend of things happening in the NBA, where there's a movement where staffs are expanding. But one of the things that's been really neat is the inclusion of women in that candidacy of coaching spots. So we've really kind of opened things up, and it's been a great evolution of the game in my mind. They deserve every opportunity that a male coach would have, and they've been doing a great job, from Becky Hammond in San Antonio to many others that have been hired since. Front office positions too, by the way, that's been part of the trend. But what a great development. But in the meantime, I'd have to say that the one thing, and I think I mentioned it earlier, there's an innate toughness of these Australian players, and Brett Brown talked about it often. There's just something different about their makeup when they come into a competitive situation. So I'm not sure I got Luke at his most competitive moments, but Luke was great to have on our team. Luke was one of the more laid back guys. I think he would rather be out body surfing than he would working in the gym sometimes, but good for him. He had a great career, and I look forward to meeting up with him as well in the competition of the NBL.
You spoke about the toughness of Australian basketball players, and you also mentioned how the NBL is regarded across the seas. It's a tough league. It's a highly competitive league. It's one of the best leagues in the world right now. What most excites you about this venture, getting involved and becoming an owner of the Hawks? Well,
again, this is a little bit of a new chapter for me, and I'm excited about being involved in a league that is viewed as a very viable league, and a league that's taken big strides recently. I think that again, the game of basketball is growing and evolving. So you're involved in something that's let's just call it a momentum opportunity, both from a standpoint of player participation, fan awareness, investment potential for us, to see if we can take this to another level. But there's all kinds of reasons why embracing this Australian brand of basketball, which is on the rise, is really good timing. I had a chance to talk to Brett Brown after the announcement today to just kind of touch base on some of the things. I used to love hearing all the stories about the Australian experience, and Tim Duncan's got a great line. I heard that Brett's from up in the Northeast and has a little bit of that Maine Boston accent, if you will. Yeah. It's a very particular tone of voice, and he somehow made it it had a little bit of an Aussie twist to it. So Tim Duncan used to say it was his Australian accent, not his Australian accent. But, you know, Brett would share with me stories about, you know, the game over here and, you know, his excitement about being involved in it and how he grew as a coach and grew as a person, really coming over and he feels like he's connected. You know, I look forward to that. That's something that really excites me about feeling that connection, you know, to the country, to, you know, the people, but, you know, to the game of basketball and the brand of basketball that they play.
Finally, do you surf? Do you get out on the waves down in Wollongong?
I don't know. It's been a while. You know, back in the day when I was in high school and maybe college, those summers were spent doing things like that. But then I got busy with other things, and it's been some time since I've gotten out to surf. But not my greatest sport. But I will say I'm still young enough to get out there and do a few things. But I'm not sure surfing in the land of the sharks is you know, my excitement right now. I'm more excited about the basketball opportunity than the surfing.
When in Wollongong? When in
Yeah.
Wollongong?
Yeah.
Hey, thanks so much for the chat. Thanks for getting involved and congratulations on taking ownership of the team along with your partners and good luck. Good luck with
Thank you very much.
the steps ahead.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much.